How many people have died in the Cameroons in the 30 years that Paul Biya has been the president through corruption, and all that money is tucked away in Paris in France? How many people die in our roads because of potholes, because some government official took away money that ought to have been used to make good roads? So this is a crime against humanity. I think Africans must recognize that bad governance is harmful to their very well-being, not only for the current generation, but generations yet to be born. This is a continent that has always had potential. These are a people that have always had potential. But since we regained our independence from the colonialists, African leaders in many countries have consistently demonstrated that they are not working in the interest of their people. And that is sad, because many of the individuals who occupied positions of leadership are still beholden to the colonial masters. We see former French colonized nations leaders who are beholden to Paris, those who are colonized by Portugal beholden to Lisbon, those who are colonized by Belgium beholden to Brussels, those colonized by the United Kingdom beholden to London, and the single country that was colonized by Spain, Equatorial Guinea, beholden to Madrid. And this is tragic. Of course, currently, many African leaders are getting beholden to Beijing, and progressively the United States of America in Washington. The net effect is that the African agenda is being sacrificed to the detriment of the peoples. And we have examples which are live as I speak. The problems in the Cameroon, the problems in Togo, the problems in South Sudan, the problem in Central African Republic, in Mali, in Mauritania. And these are sad things. And the tragic thing is that the African Union appears to be helpless in this situation. Africa has been victimized by systems of government which we do not understand and which are not serving us well. And the time is now to wake up and to begin to find African solutions to African problems. Is it doable? Yes, it is. But we must wake up from our slumber, because those who are in positions of leadership are quite comfortable with the situation as it is. We must have something in the nature of an Arab Spring. The Arab streets woke up and they told their leaders, you are going to do that which is in our best interest. Unfortunately, some of the gains made after the Arab Spring have been clawed back. And that is a lesson for us, that if you regain your independence, you must remain eternally vigilant, because the forces of reaction are very persistent. You know what is amazing about the African Union, which is the immediate successor of the OAU, is that it's beginning to let Africa down. I was amazed about a month ago when Zimbabwean president, whom I respected in his early days as a freedom fighter and as a man of vision and intellect, when he went to the African Union and made a donation of $1 million. And the African Union accepted it in a situation where the people in Zimbabwe are suffering, where there is almost 80 to 90% unemployment. And the reason why the African Union has become, as you rightly say, a toothless bulldog is because there are no leaders who are true crusaders for the agenda of the African Union in the manner that we had in the early days, when we had Nkrumah, when we had Nyerere, when we had Haile Selassie, when we had Gamal Abdel Nasser. Today, in a very perverted concept of non-interference in the affairs of other nations, and in a perverted understanding of the idea of sovereignty, people are not their brothers and sisters' keepers, so that we know that there is a festering wound in South Sudan, and we are doing nothing about it. We know there is a festering wound in the Cameroons, and we are doing nothing about it. A festering wound in Togo, and we are doing nothing about it. And even when the leaders congregate in Addis Ababa for their annual jamboree, they don't discuss these problems. Right now, I would have thought that there should be an extraordinary session of the African Union to discuss a number of things, to discuss the countries which are in trouble, and I'm mentioning them ad nauseum, to ask the question, what is the problem in the Central African Republic? How can it be resolved? What is the problem in Togo, in Gambia, in the Cameroons, and in many other countries, so that we have African solutions to African problems? Because what we'll see very shortly is that the UN will sit down and send a peacekeeping force. And when there is no peace to be kept, and they send peacekeeping forces, when, in a manner of speaking, the horse will have bolted away. So the African Union is very disappointing. When Dr. Mahamat was appointed as the chairman of the commission, I thought that this was a new person that would come with new energy to replace Nkosana and Lamini Zuma. But what I see is lethargy. What I see is lack of enthusiasm. What I see is lack of direction. What I see is continued pain. I was amazed about a month ago, if I'm not wrong, when the international community asked the African Union to nominate a country to sit in the Security Council, and they nominated the Democratic Republic of Congo. How can you possibly nominate the Democratic Republic of Congo, whose president has refused to hold election, whose country is generating refugees, whose government is controlling Kinshasa only in real terms, and where there is conflict everywhere, and where the resources are being taken away by the Chinese, the Malaysians, and the Belgians, and other rogue individuals from Europe and America, and you nominate such a person? You nominate a hyena to sit in an assembly which is judging how goats should be preserved? It is a tragedy of gigantic proportion, and we consistently do this in Africa, and we think is normal. Africa has now normalized the absurd, and we think that sense is what we do, yet it is nonsense. And unfortunately, many of us who are not in positions of influence, our younger generation particularly, think that this does not matter. This matters. If you look at the history of revolutions, it was always the young people. As early as 1908 in Turkey, it is the young people who came up to rise up against the dictatorial regime. We remember even during the Bolshevik Revolution, it was the young people. We remember during the civil rights movement led by Martin Luther King Jr. and Ralph Abernathy, among others, it was young people. In 1968 in France, when there was a problem initially in 1958 and 1968, it was young people. We remember in Tiananmen Square, it was young people. We remember in Korea in 1908, it was the young people. In South Africa, in the Sharpeville massacre in 1969, it was the young people. In Soweto in 1976, it was the young people. In the Arab world, it's the young people. But our young people in Africa today are imprisoned by Arsenal and Manchester United and Barcelona and Real Madrid, and our young girls are imprisoned by cheap South American soap operas and Beyonce Knowles. How can that be? How can a continent be so accursed that our young people have no sense of our history, no sense of our presence, no sense of our future? No wonder the Chinese are conquering us by the day. And we are wondering. John F. Kennedy said in 1960, a society whose young men and women are in a constant state of slumber will never realize our potential. Our young people must wake up. It is only the day that they wake up that they will be able to send a clear message to those in positions of leadership that you cannot continue to misgovern us. I look forward to those days. Lux in Africa is punishment. Impunity is alive and well in Africa. And we, the electorate, as I say, times without number, are in the business of celebrating thieves. We must stop. Yesterday, Barrister Farana said it very well, that we camouflage theft by giving them nice English names: money laundering, fraud, embezzlement, and all those veneers that make them look as if it is some kind of nice game. Let us call these men and women by the right name. They are thieves, stealing on an industrial scale. They are murderers. And once we begin to call them like that, and they have a mark of Cain upon their forehead, and we shun them, has it been done in African countries? Yes, it has been done. And I keep on repeating, in countries such as Tanzania, they are being dealt with. In Rwanda, they are being dealt with. In Mauritius, they are being dealt with. In Botswana, they are being dealt with. Once you begin to deal with them, then the others who may want to behave like them will begin to take the cue. We must, in the nature of things, earn what we earn through the sweat of our brow. That is the only way in which Africa will realize their potential. Many of these individuals who are in positions of leadership in Africa don't want to leave because they are thieves. And they are scared. They are scared that if they left office, they would be prosecuted. And my view is that they should be prosecuted. You know, individuals such as Hissène Habré, who we know what he did, was it in Chad, are a good example to the leadership that impunity will not thrive. Because I've been talking to a friend of mine from the Cameroons who tells me what is happening in their country right now. And other African countries are blind to it. It doesn't even occupy the headlines of the neighboring newspapers, of the country's neighbors' newspapers. Yet the Cameroons now should be in the same position as we see the conflict in Catalan in Spain. Yet we are attacking it in page 13 in newspapers in Nigeria, in Liberia, and other countries. The time has come that Africa must learn and realize that the world is not bothered about Africa. The world is only bothered about Africa when they want to take the resources of Africa. Then they bother. They want oil, they bother. And I'm using the word bother in a very deliberate fashion, not in the traditional orthodox fashion. They bother when they want to take our timber. They bother when they want to take our bauxite, when they want to take our coke, when they want to take our uranium. But they don't bother about us. They come to our continent without disrespecting the elephant, and they want to preserve the elephant so that they can come and watch the elephant, but they don't care if 100 Africans die. They want to preserve our monkeys. They want to preserve our leopards and our other animals, but they don't care about us. To them, Africa is a zoo of sorts. And until the day that we Africans realize that we are on our own, we are going nowhere. And very soon they are going to shut us out, if they have not shut us out already. We'll not go to the United States of America, we'll not go to Europe, and I'm happy that we are being forced to stay in Africa. Let us stay in Africa and build Africa. I mean, what does Africa lack in terms of resources? What do we lack? If it is solar energy, which continent is capable of producing solar energy to light this continent and the entire earth? If it is hydroelectricity, what can we not generate? If it is minerals, if we wanted to make bombs, if we should, where do they get their uranium from? If it is timber, what don't we have? If it is human resources, we are 2 billion of us. And we are people who have intelligence. And yet we are kept in a constant state of conflict. The Europeans, the French persuading their former colonies that they are more French than they are Yoruba. They are more French than they are Wolofs and Mandinkas. The British persuading us that we are more British than we are Ibibio or Yoruba. And of course, when we find ourselves in that schizophrenic state, then we engage in internal conflict and they sell their arms to us. Tell me, which African country makes guns? None. Without doubt.
I've
always said, and I think that this, sometimes you've got to raise things to the level of the absurd. Because what does corruption do to a country? Yeah. Look at the thieving ways of Mobutu Sese Seko in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Congo has never recovered from the thieving of Mobutu and his acolytes. How many people did not have medicine in hospitals, including a hospital named after his own mother, Mama Yemo in Kinshasa? How many died? Perhaps more than in the Holocaust. How many people have died in the Cameroons in the 30 years that Paul Biya has been the president through corruption, and all that money is tucked away in Paris in France? How many people die in our roads because of potholes, because some government official took away money that ought to have been used to make good roads? So this is a crime against humanity, for which punishment should be the ultimate punishment. And in China, they do exactly that. They come to this part of the world, they corrupt our leaders, but if you are corrupt in China, they'll deal with you firmly, swiftly, and take away your life, so that you are no longer a danger to society. I believe that corruption should be a crime against humanity, because the impact of corruption in Africa in many areas, how many people are maimed because we imported polio vaccination that were not potent, so that somebody could buy a mansion in Florida or some other island in the United States of America or in the Caribbean. How many? How many of the roads here in Nigeria, how many have been involved in defense contract corruption, so that we have in a situation where we cannot have things that we ought to deserve? I mean, it has been more pernicious than any other thing. Corruption has killed more people than the civil wars combined in Africa. And yet we treat it with velvet gloves. We glamorize these individuals. We continue to elect them in office. They bribe us with 500 naira, 500 cedis, 20 kwanza, and we continue to elect them. And then they claim democracy. Look recently during the UN General Assembly in New York, what and how African leaders behaved. They stayed in the most expensive hotels, the world of Astoria, except the Tanzanian delegation. And yet, in their homes, people don't have potable water to drink. Yet, in their homes, there is no medicine in hospitals. You know, sometimes in an interview setting such as this, we appear to be intellectualizing about it, to be philosophizing about it. But if we walked out 2 kilometers away from here within Lagos, there are real things. There could be testimony of a woman who delivered on the roadside because there was no health facility. There are real issues in Africa, very real. Perhaps sometimes we should take these interviews there so that they are testimonies.
Great.
When you are looking at an election and the expression of the will of the people, you ask yourself, where does the will of the people reside? It is in the vote. And if you doubt the vote, you count the votes. You don't ask whether the transmission of the results failed through an electronic process when you have been presented with the actual documents. This is without precedent in the world. And if you look at the minority ruling in that case, in a few years, the minority ruling, which even if you listened, was the more legally potent. So these judges who are in the majority were completely wrong. And they know it, I think, that they got the law wrong, they got the facts wrong, and it's now even emerging that their decision was based on fake forms, which must have been infiltrated by the petitioners. It is tragic. And This is one of the problems in Africa, and I see many people, particularly in the social media, which Africans are misusing very badly, that somebody is quick to send Twitter, somebody is quick to send a message on Instagram or Facebook. You ask them, have you ever read the judgment? No, I've not read the judgment. Then what are you tweeting about? What are you Facebooking about? Everybody. What stimulates the African electorate is instant solutions. The 500 naira that he or she is going to use to buy gari or to buy maize meal in my country. That is the problem. African electorate on average does not respond to ideas. That is what we must do. The African electorate, once we have re-engineered our governance, must ask themselves, what do they want? And you've seen consistently in almost in every other country in Africa, those who acquired power through the ballot are not our best men and women. They are our most corrupt men and women, invariably. Even the leaders we now praise initially could never have been elected. Yoweri Kaguta Museveni in Uganda, when he contested in 1980s, failed. He came back through a guerrilla movement, succeeded. Now the Ugandans saw this man is good. Paul Kagame rescued the Rwandese. Now they think and know he's good. Meles Zenawi in Ethiopia. The African electorate must liberate themselves. Wole Soyinka, who is in Nigerian, how many times has he tried to run for office? Did he not run for the presidency? At one time here in Nigeria, did the Nigerians elect him? The anti-corruption crusader Nuhu Ribadu, did he not run for office? Did the Nigerians elect him? Jean Ping in Gabon, he ran for election. Did they elect him? Africans don't elect men and women who wish them well.